Good morning. My name is Tedman Wong, Hearing Officer for San Francisco Public Works. Sharice Waiters is the clerk for this hearing. This hearing is being recorded via Zoom and will be available afterward through a link on the San Francisco Public Works website, sfpublicworks.org. As this is a virtual hearing, there's no sign-in sheet, so if you would like to receive information about the results of this hearing, please send an email to the email address listed on the hearing notice. This public hearing is being held to consider one item, Order number 210097, to consider an appeal for the illegal removal of 5 significant trees on private property at 3800 Washington Street. The fine issued is $50,000. My job as a hearing officer is to gather the facts for the hearing item, listen to your testimonies, and help our Director of Public Works make determinations. I will not be making any decisions today. Instead, I will forward the findings from this hearing and make my recommendations to the director. The director will make the final determinations. When the director's determinations are made, the department will notify you of them if you have provided contact information. The hearing will proceed as follows for today's case. I will ask Public Works staff to speak first and present the case. There will be no time limit for this presentation. Then I will allow the property owner or appellant to speak. Then I will allow members of the public or witnesses to speak. After Public Works staff presents the case, each speaker will have up to 3 minutes to speak. The clerk will monitor the time for all speakers and will indicate when the speaker has 30 seconds left. If you are a party to this proceeding, I will call on you to speak. If you would like to use visual materials in your presentation, please let me know before you speak. You will then have the standard 3 minutes to provide your comments. If you are a member of the public or witness who wants to speak, wait for me to call for public comments. If you have joined us on a computer, use Zoom's raise your hand feature to put yourself in the queue to speak. If you have joined us on a telephone, press *9 to indicate you are raising your hand. When it is your turn to speak, I will recognize you. If you are on a computer, unmute yourself before you speak. If you are on a telephone, press *6 to unmute yourself before you speak. If you would like to use visual materials in your presentation, please let me know before you speak. You will then have the standard 3 minutes to provide your comments. Comments and questions should be addressed to me and not to the department. If you cannot finish your comments within the allotted time, you may submit written testimony to me by the end of this hearing. If I feel that a question is warranted, I will ask the question. After all comments are completed, I will close the item. We will now begin the hearing. We will start with any general public comments. This is for members of the public to address the hearing officer on matters that are within the department's jurisdiction, but are not on today's agenda. Are there any general public comments at this time?
We have one hand. I'm going to allow you to speak. Go ahead, you can unmute yourself.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wong. My name is Michael Carboy. I'm a resident of Presidio Heights. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Excellent, thank you. I have noticed that when trees are scheduled for removal here in the city, there's always a posting on the trees that indicates the reason for why the trees are being removed. I noticed no posting on the removal of these trees and could find no record of the removal of the trees within the Department of Public Works Urban Forestry unit for scheduled or approved removal of these significant trees. In speaking with 2 of my own arborists, they have confirmed great familiarity on the part of licensed arborists in the city with the DPW's urban forestry significant tree rules. And I noticed that the trees that were removed had no postings, which leads me to wonder sort of why were they removed without following proper city procedure that's very, very clearly articulated on the city website and well known to any properly licensed arborist operating within the confines of the city and county of San Francisco. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Are there any other general public comments at this time?
And please note that the comments should be on items that are not on today's agenda. This portion of the hearing is for you to address the hearing officer with matters that are within the department's jurisdiction, but not on today's agenda. We haven't gotten to the case yet. Thank you. I don't see any other hands at this time, Mr. Wong.
Okay, if there are no more general public comments, I will close this item. This item is now closed. We will now move on to hearing order number 210097 to consider an appeal for the illegal removal of 5 significant trees on private property at 3800 Washington Street. The fine issued is $50,000. May I have Public Works make its presentation?
Good morning. Sorry, are you guys waiting for me?
Yes, Chris, we're ready for you.
Thank you. I was just trying to get this PDF in presenter mode, but I think this will work. So pardon me for a moment. I'm gonna get back to the screen. Sorry about that, folks. I just had a technical difficulty at the last second. So good morning. My name is Chris Buck, and I'm the urban forester with San Francisco Public Works, Bureau of Urban Forestry. And before we get into the specifics of the case that we'll be hearing this morning, we cover a lot of background about our urban forestry ordinance, which is covered within Article 16 of the Public Works Code, and really get into some of the details around the protections that trees have in San Francisco. The presentation is mostly geared towards pruning practices and pruning concerns. The case this morning, we only have one administrative case this morning, and it's regarding a removal of trees without a permit. And so I may, for the sake of brevity, skip through some of the sections that get into the fine points of pruning. So with that, I'm going to share my screen and just wanted to say good morning, visible to everyone. So sorry, and I appreciate your patience. So let me pull up the presentation. And can you all see the PowerPoint well enough?
Yes, we see your PowerPoint. We also see the presenter notes. I don't know if you want that showing or not, but it's all visible.
That's fine. I think our staff puts those in there as a general guide. I don't typically need to refer to those. So that's fine. As I stated just moments ago, San Francisco's urban forestry ordinance is in the Public Works Code under Article 16. And the ordinance establishes authorization and standards for addressing a wide range of issues regarding trees. That's good. Today, this is an administrative hearing, and the first section we'll cover is Section 808, which is regarding the protection of trees and landscape material, where it states that injury to or destruction of trees is prohibited, whether intentionally, maliciously, or through negligence. If a tree is injured or destroyed, a street tree, any tree on city property, or a significant tree, which is on private property, or a landmark tree. In addition to the penalties set forth in subsections A and B above, the director may require any person who removes or destroys a tree in violation of the provisions of this article to pay for each tree removed or destroyed a sum of $10,000 or the tree's replacement value, which is ever greater of the two. The director may require any person who injures a tree in violation of the provisions of this article to pay a sum of money equal to the diminishment of the tree's value as set forth in the current edition of the Guide for Plan Appraisal, Council of Tree and Landscape Appraisers. Where an abutting property owner removed a street tree or trees without obtaining a permit, the department shall require the property owner plant a replacement street tree or trees with total diameter 6 inches above ground that is equal to or greater than the total diameter of the street tree or trees that were removed without a permit. This requirement, just as a side note, was a new requirement amended as of February last year, actually February 2 years ago. So it's a relatively new requirement. So today we're both discussing the fine for the removal without a permit, but we also need to discuss the replacement requirements because they're much more substantial than they were just a few years ago. Article 16, Section 806 outlines that a permitted planting and removal of street trees. Under 3, removal. An abutting property owner who desires a permit to remove a street tree shall apply to the department on the designated form. The department may grant or deny the permit in accordance with the following procedures and requirements. If the department grants a tree removal permit, it shall require that a street tree or trees of equivalent replacement value to the one removed be planted in the place of the removed tree or impose an in lieu fee, unless it makes written findings detailing the basis for waiving or modifying this requirement. Note also that this refers to both street trees and significant trees. Protection of trees is required during construction. I don't believe this would be the scenario that we're discussing today, but there are measures that people need to adhere to for construction-related work. Our code also does define a lot of the words in the ordinance, and injure or injury is defined as any act which harms or damages the tree, including but not limited to, and then it lists a number of ways in which trees may be damaged. We will not be focused on a pruning citation today, so we will skip over the sections about pruning. In addition to the penalties set forth in subsections A and B, the director may require any person who removes or destroys a tree in violation of the provisions to pay for each tree removed or destroyed a sum of $10,000 or the tree's replacement value, whichever is greater. We've covered this already in the previous section, but this is where it comes from in our ordinance. In summary, trees are more than just beautiful additions to urban life. They're an essential component of the city's ecosystem and provide enormous environmental and social benefits. A permit is required to remove any street tree, significant tree, or a landmark tree. It is illegal to injure a tree. Injuries can include excessive pruning or malicious acts such as nailing objects to the trees or negligent acts like vehicular accidents. An illegal removal of a tree requires replacement with equivalent inches in total diameter of the street tree or trees that were removed. Generally speaking, it is the property owner's responsibility to know the law, and this comes off as a little harshly, but we often note that ignorance of the requirement is not doesn't excuse someone of that responsibility. And I think today we'll likely discuss, perhaps the contractor who's involved with removing the trees without a permit. We can skip over the pruning practices. This is for cases where excessive pruning occurred and the trees were not removed completely without a permit. San Francisco maintains existing street trees, but we're not talking about street trees in the sidewalk and the public right of way. So we'll spare everyone the details about all the work that we put into maintaining the trees in San Francisco. And with that, we can now begin this particular case with some of the general background included. So this is order number 210097, 3800 Washington Street, and it's to consider an appeal the illegal removal of 5 significant trees at 3800 Washington Street, and the fine issued was for a total of $50,000. Urban Forestry was notified, the Bureau of Urban Forestry staff were notified in August of 2023 of a possible illegal removal of significant trees at 3800 Washington Street. Urban Forestry staff followed up on the request and confirmed that trees that qualified as significant trees on private property were removed without a permit. The fine was issued on September 5th, 2023 for the removal of 5 significant trees without a permit. The image shows tape measure showing a measurement and the context for the site of the significant tree that is on the Washington Street frontage of the property. And we'll provide a number of photos just so we can kind of go into the details and talk about what a significant tree, what that actually means, because I don't believe we've covered that yet. But a significant tree is a tree on private property with any portion of its trunk within 10 feet of a public right-of-way. In this case, the public right-of-way, because it's a corner property, there's public right-of-way on both frontages of the property. So this aerial image shows approximate location of the trees removed with the yellow X's. And a permit is required to remove a significant tree that it's on private property within 10 feet of the public right-of-way. And the significant trees are indicated with the X symbol. We also measure the public right-of-way in the key maps. And so each street or block in the city may have varying width of the public right-of-way. So in this case, the Maple Street frontage has a 15-foot public right-of-way. And the property of 3800 Washington Street that were removed are seen in this image. This image was taken from a real estate website. It's something that we often do just to do general background, as much information as we can gather as possible. The urban forestry inspector who prepared the slide presentation just, wanted to put out there that no surprise, there are, San Francisco is a city of many, many hills and many views. And so that might be one reason for the removal of the trees. When someone applies to remove trees through a permit with our bureau, we review it very closely. And so typically we would only approve trees for removal if they're in poor condition and pose a potential public safety risk or had other significant structural defects or reasons for removal. Of course, removing a tree for review would not meet any of those criteria. Again, so the property owner should have submitted a permit for review so that the Bureau of Urban Forestry and Public Works could review the proposed removal. We have a robust permit process that requires public notification of 30 days. And not only are our permits subject to a hearing at Public Works, but those resulting decisions are also appealable to Board of Appeals. So even at the staff level, we can't typically tell anyone, any applicant, the ultimate decision of a removal application because we don't have ultimate control the staff level of review is really just an initial step in that process. So noted here is a view across the street, and there were major landscaping renovations, including sod, tree pruning or topping, tree removal, and new plants installed. This shows the Maple Street frontage. This image is taken from Google Street View in April of 2022. And we are just showing the significant trees marked with X's. These 4 street trees met the significant tree requirement by height or diameter. And let me see if we cover so for a tree to qualify as being significant, it would need to be within 10 feet of the public right of way and just meet any one of these 3 minimum size criterias. One is a height greater that exceeds 20 feet, a canopy width that exceeds 15 feet, or a trunk diameter that exceeds 12 inches in diameter. So our urban forestry inspector looked at the site, and as you'll see in the following images, documented to confirm if the trees that were removed, if they qualified as significant trees. Looking at the Washington Street frontage of the property, we, just as a side note, it's unrelated to the fine issued for illegal removal. Our urban forestry inspector was not necessarily aware of this until they did their own investigation. There was a claim-related matter on this frontage shown in red. We had actually, because we were on site in August of 2022, I myself had listed that tree as a significant tree because it was involved in a claim and I'd been on site. The documentation was part of a claim with the city attorney's office, and the trunk was measured to be within the 10 feet of the public right of way. So I did make that measurement myself in August of 2022. Our urban forestry inspector also documented their work, that they used a visual estimate to make assumptions about the stump diameter. When we measure a tree for general purposes, we typically measure it 4.5 feet above grade for indexing in our tree database. But our code, as cited earlier, talks about, for purposes of illegal removals, they refer to the trunk diameter at 6 inches above grade, which is much lower to the ground. So based on the professional experience, the estimate of the tree's diameter is to be 19 to 23 inches. And we settled on 19 inches diameter as a very conservative visual estimate, because we don't want to be seen as being overly aggressive or excessive in our determinations. This again is the view of the Monterey pine tree before it was removed. And then the diameter estimated to be 19 inches. This photo's from 2022. I believe I took this image. And this image is after the tree was removed without a permit, showing new landscaping, the bushes, sod, and the Monterey pine removed without a permit. On the Maple Street frontage, this shows 3 stumps from redwood trees within 10 feet of the public right-of-way. The 3 stumps were measured and found to be within 10 feet of the public right-of-way. This is showing some of the measurements well within 10 feet of the public right-of-way. When even measuring at the back of the trunk, it's still well within 10 feet. Again, showing a number of measurements. This one was about 8 feet. This other one was 6.5. So these are the 3 stumps from the redwood trees within 10 feet of the public right-of-way. And again, as covered, the significant tree criteria, only one of needs to be met, would be if the trees are greater than 20 feet in height. Measured stumps on February 16th, 2024, from left to right, the diameter including the bark, is 17 inches, 19 inches, and 16 inches. And so those all are exceeding 12 inches in diameter. Here's another view of the stumps and the measurements. So 17 inches, 19 inches, and 16 inches. This shows the models that were used to calculate the diameter measured at 4.5 feet above grade. There's a Curtis model by the USDA Forest Service, and we're just showing our math, and I'm assuming that this was included within the administrative fine letter to the property owner because we're just trying to show our math. But again, what this is trying to determine is the amount of replacement tree diameter that we would require. So we've established the trees qualified as significant trees, but now the other thing we need to determine is how much trunk diameter exists. So what's our replacement tree requirement? And so that is what these screens show. Also, there's one stump from an unknown species within 10 feet of the public right-of-way, multi-stem diameter greater than 12 inches. I'm not sure if I don't believe that's part of this fine, so I'm not sure what the point of that slide is. We did note that street trees were topped, meaning the heights were reduced. Street trees are the maintenance responsibility of Public Works. So ideally, the property owner would get permission from the city to prune any street tree in the public right-of-way, and we would review the scope of work and be able to advise that pruning the heights of street trees is not typically allowed or permitted. These are views of the top street trees. The species is Acacia melanoxylon. There are some divots or depressions or low areas in the public right-of-way, and this was noted as a concern. I'll get to this later. We believe some of these divots should be addressed by the property owner. A little bit of a summary here on how we established the fine. So Buff issued the fine for illegal removal of 5 significant trees, 4 along Maple and 1 along the Washington Street frontage. Illegal removal of trees without a permit requires the property owner to plant replacement trees with total diameter 6 inches above ground that is equal to or greater than the total diameter of the trees removed without a permit. The stump on Washington was ground out when the site inspected for illegal removal. We visually estimated the diameter at breast height, which again is 4.5 feet above grade. Based on conservative estimates, the property owner is required to replace a total of 70 inches of diameter or pay the difference in lieu fees. The summary of the tree diameters that were removed without a permit were a 19-inch diameter significant tree, a 12-inch unknown multi-stem species. Okay, so we did issue a fine for the multi-stem species. A 13-inch redwood, 14-inch redwood, and another 12-inch redwood. These are the conservative estimates for replacement requirement. The total is 70 inches. We also looked at some possible replacement scenarios. One would be possible replanting requirement would be to plant 3 48-inch box trees in locations that would help determine if those trees have a caliper of 3.5 inches. Planting 3 48-inch box trees would equal 10.5 inches, and there would be a difference of obviously 59.5 inches of trunk diameter, 60 inches. The in lieu fees for that could be paid to make up the difference. The in lieu fee is $2,431 per 24-inch box tree, assuming a 2-inch trunk diameter at planting. Here are some summary notes from our urban forestry inspector, and it's our last slide of our presentation. The department believes the property owner made extensive landscaping improvements, including the topping of street trees for views. It is the contractor's responsibility to know the laws and regulations for working with trees within the municipality where they're performing work. The property owner should also be required to improve the public right-of-way to reduce the trip and fall risk from the bricks and divots or depressions in the grass landscape strip between the sidewalk and the curb. This would be just to reduce the potential of a tripping hazard, knowing that there's already a incident of that reported on the frontage. 3800 Washington Street requirements. In addition to the fine, the property owner representative is required to submit a retroactive removal application and provide replacement mitigation equal to the diameter of the trees removed. The property owner should be required to replace 1 significant tree on Washington Street and at least 2 significant trees on Maple Street. The additional diameter required as mitigation can be assessed as in lieu fees. The recommendation of 2 significant trees on private property and 1 on private property in Washington is to just say that there conservatively is room to plant that amount of replacement trees on the property. And if I don't think there's room in the sidewalk to plant possible replacement trees, but that's typically another scenario which we could triple check, but I don't believe that's being recommended at this time because the spacing between the existing street trees isn't large enough. But to handle the cases the way we have previously, the fine for illegal removal was $10,000 minimum per tree, and we weren't able to do an appraised value. So we were able to assess the minimum illegal removal fine of $10,000 per tree, and with 5 trees removed, the total was $50,000. I just want to say personally, I understand that's a large sum of money. San Franciscans value street trees and significant trees and have really mandated their protection. And when trees are removed without a permit, it just undermines the public's trust in the city's ability to protect and enhance the urban forest. So that's the obvious reasoning behind the severity of issuing those fines. That said, again, this is presented with the staff, by staff, and as the urban forester overseeing our urban forestry inspectors, just wanted to cover as much of this as possible so that it'll help in the discussion that we'll have this morning. So with that, that concludes our staff presentation, and I can stop sharing the screen. So thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Chris. Now, does any representative of the property owner or appellant wish to speak? You have 3 minutes to make your presentation.
Yes, hi, my name is Kuljeet Singh. I'm associated with the property. I'm the one who managed the property. First of all, I'll start saying the tree that blocks the view was not cut down because that tree was not, did not have any issues with it. The other 4 trees that were removed, they had huge black spots coming down. And being out of, I'm not from San Francisco. I came in and we hired arborists, and they came in, and now I'm hearing to you guys, see where the confusion these guys had. They said as long as the tree was 10 feet from the street, they can cut it. And when they measured it, they gave me a go ahead and said, yes, we can cut these trees. One, because they were turning black, and they said they could fall on the property. The other issue was we had found the trees, the root system going into the house as well. The owners actually liked the trees because they were blocking the view. They liked the privacy of their house. The trees, that's why, the way the trees were actually protecting it. If you look from the house, none of the view has actually changed with the trees cutting. You just get to see more of the street rather than anything else. But anyway, there was a tree that arborist who hired. We thought they knew, since they were arborists and tree cutting company in San Francisco. I thought they knew what they were doing. And I know you mentioned ignorance, not the answer, but unfortunately, I relied on the company and said, okay, go ahead. You guys know, and they did the 10 feet from the street. And they went over the sidewalk, because they went to the street 10 feet, and then they cut the trees. We would have to cut the trees anyway because of the issue they were having. Again, they had huge black spots on them. They were dying trees, as in and we want. So that was the reason they were cut. And listen, I am sincerely apologize that we didn't go to you guys and ask that. I really thought, somebody who is working in San Francisco, these companies that are working in California, they know the rules. And me being outside of California, merely, I apologize for that, but that was we relied on the company to cut these trees. And all I can request at this point is, listen, this fine is huge, and I don't want to lose my job on this as well. So I really appreciate if we can reduce the fines, and again, we'll make sure that none of that stuff happens ever again. I'm done. Thank you. Sorry.
Okay, thank you. Now, if there are any members of the public who wish to speak, you will have 3 minutes to make your presentation. And if you have already spoken, you will not be able to speak again.
Mr. Wong, this is Mr. Carboy from Presidio Heights. I know I made my remarks improperly at the beginning. May I continue?
Sure.
Thank you. I'm a resident here at Presidio Heights. I note that none of the trees had been marked by the Department of Public Works, Bureau of Urban Forestry for removal. I note the appellant has not indicated any expertise in arboreal certification and has not purported to be an arborist. So the allegations of black spots are unclear and perhaps specious. Any competent arborist, whether you talk to Bartlett, Everett, Tree Designs, or yeah, I'm sorry, there's a fourth name I can't think of it off the top of my head. Arborists now are all painfully familiar with exactly what the measuring procedures are and know very quickly what a significant tree is and is not, and understand to coordinate with the Department of Public Works, Bureau of Urban Forestry for removals. I argue against any mitigation to this fine. The removal of tree growth on this property, on both the Maple Street frontage as well as the Washington Street frontage, is substantial. Those trees were decades old and were a major contributor to the green belt in and around that area. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Do we have any other members of the public who wish to speak?
There are no other hands for the members of the public.
Okay, thank you. I see Mr. Singh's hand up, but your time to speak was earlier, and so you would not be able to speak again. If there are no more public comments for this item, I will now close the item and will make my recommendations to the director. Order number 210097 is now closed. And we have reached the end of today's agenda. Are there any additional public comments on any of the items on today's agenda? If you have spoken, you will not be allowed to speak again. This is for those who might have come late or who didn't have a chance to speak earlier. If there are no more public comments, I am closing this hearing. This hearing is now closed.
Thank you.